All right, I just started recording. So, like I was saying, I hope everybody's having a good week so far. I realize this is a busy, busy time of the year, especially if you're trying to get some testing done before Christmas break. So, totally get it. Hey, Mary, how are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Good. I'm all right. All right, we're just kind of swapping war stories here before we start. It's that time of the year, right? Okay, before I share my screen, so to kind of wrap up where we're at, make sure we're all together and on the same page. Last Sunday, should have had your group, FBA Step 2, submitted. So here we are, literally. Remember, guys, looking ahead, the semester ends for us on Friday, December the 15th. So that Friday date, if you remember, I just want to remind everyone on here tonight and also on the recording, is the only time during this course that any assignment's not due on a Sunday. It's due on a Friday, and it's that final. It's the behavior intervention plan and then that reflection paper. Okay. Step 3 of the FBA, we're going to talk about it first tonight, go over it step by step, make sure everyone has a clear understanding of what we're looking for. It will be due this Sunday coming up, which will be the 10th. That's it, due same time, on or before midnight. And then we have a really short, quick turnaround where the BIP and that reflection will be due on Friday at the end of the next week. So we have quick turnaround. Assignment due this Sunday, turn around, and then the behavior intervention plan due Friday. Okay. And it'll be Friday at midnight. It's not Friday at 2, not Friday at 4. It's Friday at midnight, but it's just 2 days earlier. It gives me a little bit of a window to grade because on our end as instructors, we have to have our grades submitted. They want them on that Monday on or before noon. So that's why we try to do that final a little bit earlier. So looking at our time frame, everyone good, everyone following that, and a clear understanding on what we're looking at coming up. Okay. All right. First thing we're going to walk through, step 3. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at that form. It looks just a little bit different, maybe compared to the forms that were used in step 1 and 2. I'm going to go through and walk through that form step by step, give you the opportunity to ask any questions you may have so we have a good understanding of that. Then I'll exit my screen share. Then I will pop up the behavior intervention plan template, and we're going to walk through that step by step. And that way we've covered it in depth. You guys can ask detailed questions, whatever you need before we get off tonight. Okay. So that's kind of what we're going to do the next, hopefully we can get it done the next 50 minutes, hour. Okay. So everybody ready? Get started. Share this quickly. Get shifted over. Wrong one. Bear with me just a minute. I just everyone see my screen now. Shows on my end that is sharing. You should see. Oh, still not yet. My bad. My sign. Just a sorry about the lace here. Right now, and see if we have any success. Nope. Pardon the interruption here, guys. I'm struggling trying to get that to switch over for some reason. I've got the screen up I want, but it's not sharing. Let me try it one more time here. Here we go. All right, fine. All right. Everyone see my screen. At the top, it should say top left-hand corner, submit FBA step 3s. Everyone see that? We're good? Okay. So I've already had a couple email questions already. Hey, where do we find step 3 template. You simply go, it's in week 7. You just click on the week 7 tab. This page you see right now on your screen will pop up. You're going to see FBA form, the document. Okay, that is the blank document. I'm not going to pull that up. I'm going to pull up another one that has a lot of detailed explanation on it. And you can also use this form as an example after we meet tonight as a reference if you need it. Okay. Instead, I'm going to pull up the document that's titled Completing the FBA Form Instructions. That's what I'm going to pull up. You should, on your screen, the way mine's sharing, you should see the document, the actual template form that pops up, and you should see some red font on there. That's where they have put in information for the directions. Did everybody see it? So it's the basic FBA assessment template form that I referenced on the first little tab, which I did not open, and I chose to click on the second one that has a lot of specific directions. So this is what you're going to complete for step 3. Okay, we're actually doing the functional behavior assessment. This example provides you some step-by-step instructions and explanation. The first thing we're going to do after we put our prototypical student that you selected, we're going to put some basic information in what grade, their name, school. You can put XYZ for confidentiality purposes. You don't have to put their actual school. Date of birth, if you want to go ahead and list their actual date of birth, that's fine. It's all right. It gives me an idea. I can look at that and tell exactly how old they were. And then the date that you're completing this, I would put Sunday's date. That's the due date. Okay. All right. First box, first thing that we're looking for, it says strengths, interest of the student. And beside that, it says include what the student would consider a reinforcement. This is going back and looking at your document, your data, your information that you included in step 1 and step 2 that you were collecting. We're going to start referencing some of that information. So we're going to go back, Danielle or Barry, if you guys had a student, I'm just pretending you guys were in the same group. You guys would collaborate, go back, say, okay, we need to make sure that we're listing the student strengths. And we're just going to describe, give a brief narrative in that box. You can literally type it in. This is a Word document format, editable. You can just type it in. You're going to describe what that student liked, what he or she enjoyed or has an interest in. Also, you want to make sure you include what might be motivating for the student or what they would consider a reinforcement or reward based on the data that you have collected and put in for step 1 and step 2. So step 1, you all your groups, Barry, Danielle, Colette, I'm saying you guys were in a group for this purpose. You each had your specific forms and information, and you came back, collaborated, and you narrowed it down into step 2 and submitted that, if you remember doing that. What was that? What was that student's strength? This is where we're going to list it right here. It's just providing that basic information. What was a reinforcement or a reward that he or she liked? Okay, pretty straightforward. The next thing we're going to focus on is the operational definition of target behavior or the behavior of concern. The little note beside that, this needs to be, or it must be, something that was observable, measurable, and repeatable. So we're going to label the targeted behavior. You did this in step 2. You remember you were going through and checking what that target behavior was you're going to identify. Last week, if you remember, when I used the example, mine was destruction of property, and I kind of walked you through that scenario. Your group, Barry, your group, it might have been off-task, non-compliance, disruptive behavior. That's what was used for this example, okay, on this form. So simply, you're just going to identify what was it. Then you're going to provide the examples. What were the examples of that targeted behavior? Again, it needs to be observable, repeatable, measurable. So the example, laying head on desk, fidgeting with non-instructional materials, talking to peers. That was the targeted behavior. It was something that you observed, you measured it, maybe he or she did it multiple times. You documented that. This was the behavior. Next thing we're going to do within this particular box, we're going to label the peak behavior. So example, was it elopement? Was kind of the peak? Did they elope? Did they leave a room? Was it physical aggression? Okay, so you're just going to kind of provide that explanation there. It doesn't have to be anything that's long and elaborate. Couple words. Then we're going to provide examples of that peak behavior. So again, it needs to be something that's measurable. Example, running out of the building, hitting other students, kicking other students. Again, we're just going to provide a brief explanation. Few words. It doesn't have to be multiple sentences. It doesn't have to be a paragraph. It's real to the point. After we complete those items in the second box, we're going to drop down to where it says summary of ABC data and observations. You did this in step 1, if you remember. Okay, this was all the information collected in step 1. On this, you don't have to. There's a note on there that says you may include data graph if you want, if you choose to. Totally up to you. It's not required. It was just something that was suggested. Right below it says minimum of 2 hours of ABC data collected over at least 5 days with a minimum of 8 occurrences. And then in the note beside it says, remember, only keep data on the targeted behavior of concern. You guys did that in your data collections, right? When you were doing your observations. The setting, we're going to provide an explanation of the setting. Where, when, with whom, where the student experienced success. Okay, where did that occur? When they had success. So the note here, the example in red says in reviewing your ABC data, you record here the setting where the student experienced success during the school day. Okay, so when we're doing this, some of this is not all going to be focusing on the negative. We're going to be also including some information on things you saw that were positive, that worked. Okay. Again, the setting where the targeted behavior occurs most often. That could also include where, with whom, or when. So the targeted behavior may have occurred only when your student, Barry and Danielle, was with a particular student. Maybe that triggered it, set it off. You're going to provide that information here. So as you review your ABC data, you are going to record here the setting where the student experienced the targeted behavior or the behavior of concern most often during school day. Okay. That may stick out like a sore thumb to you based on your data, Barry. It may have occurred absolutely 100% of the time during transitional times between classes. It could have been the first 15 minutes of the intervention room setting. For some reason, it was always during that. So this is where you're going to list and provide that explanation of where it was occurring, where you pinpointed that at, or where it was commonly observed. We've completed that. Okay, again, I want to emphasize these are not long, lengthy paragraphs. You're putting 1 to 2 sentence descriptions on that. The next area we're going to focus on is the hypothesis or the function of the behavior. Most common antecedents. So this is the targeted behavior and functions of the behavior. So the explanations it provides. Use your ABC data to determine the most frequent antecedents. Okay. Include 3 components in the hypothesis statement. So step 2, we did the hypothesis statement. Remember, part of it was provided for you and you had to complete the specific gaps in that statement with your information. Everyone remember doing that in step 2? It was toward the end of that step 2 form. So you've already done that. So you're going to pull that information from step 2 and provide it on here. Make sure you include the components, the 3 components in your hypothesis statement, the antecedent, the targeted behavior, or the behavior of concern. It gives you an example, much like the example we provided in step 2. The example here, when presented with an instrument or instructional task, with an instructional task, Johnny engages in off-task behaviors to access attention and or escape the task. Okay. Again, you're looking at the hypothesis statement you created from step 2, and this is where you're going to plug it in and you're going to provide that statement, giving an example. Just provided one there for you. Again, it's a 1 to 2 sentence statement explaining that. Pretty straightforward. The next item we're going to drop down, I'm going to scroll up on my screen a tad bit here, is we're looking at the summary of the baseline data results. Excuse me. Here talks about a minimum of 3 to 5 data points, 3 to 5 occurrences that you documented. So, for example, baseline data was kept from maybe a certain date. Here, under taking into consideration, these are condensed classes, and this is a condensed FBA. Your date range might only be a week, maybe 10 days, versus under normal circumstances, your date range that you're taking observation and data points might be over a 3, 4, 5 week period. So again, remember, we're doing the condensed version here. So we're going to provide the date range. Again, it might have been over a week, and we're going to talk about, measuring time on task during 60 minutes of whole group instruction. That was an example. So you're going to take information you've listed in your step 1 or step 2. Literally, you can copy and paste it into here. Even if you have a graph that you want to share, don't have to on a graph, but you could also include it there if you choose to do that. So basically, what we're looking for here is basically a summary, in words, a description of the baseline data if you choose to do that. So it makes it easier when you're developing a behavior intervention plan. If you have some data, if you have some baselines that you can kind of show on that, if it's possible, I would include it there. So for example, that was provided, baseline data was collected from January the 10th, 2022 to January the 14th, 2022. So on this, they're looking at 4 days. Measuring time on task during 60 minutes of whole group instruction. On average, Johnny was on task 23% of the time. Pretty straightforward. So Barry, if you were looking at this, sitting in a meeting, that would give you a pretty clear indicator that his time on task was very low, very minimal, right? In a 60-minute setting. Okay. Again, we're wanting to try to provide very precise and concise statements on here. So when you develop these FBAs and preparing for a behavior intervention plan, you have very specific statements in these plans that are giving an overall synopsis of all the data that you've pre-collected up to that point. Okay, so that's what step 3 basically is doing. So we provided that information, the summary, kind of given the statement there, and then we're going to drop down to our next bit, the second half of this. This is where we're focusing on and providing information on prevention. We've identified everything now. We've got our statement, our focus on that. Now we're thinking ahead about prevention. How can we prevent this in the future? So we're looking at changes to environment, changes to instruction, adult and peer interactions. Remember, the last half of step 2, you had to go down through there and identify some of the things. What were some of the things, the teacher factors, student factors, and also peer factors, and you had to check those items that you felt like was applicable to your student. Okay. So here we're going to go in here and we're going to kind of give a start date. So now we're starting to think ahead for your student. So our start date, we're just going to list the start date in which the intervention was started. Okay, we're going to provide that intervention going to have a narrative, a little bit more information than we did the first half of this document. Interventions and strategies to support. Here it's telling us, it's saying list any positive behavioral intervention strategies that seek to support adaptive and pro-social behaviors that build on the strengths of the student. Again, here, we're not necessarily focusing on the negative side, but we're going to look at what we felt like are the student's strengths that we saw positive, negative. We know there's some positive. We're going to list some things here that we can build on those positive behaviors that we observe. Also in this section, list any physical adaptations to the environment that are necessary for the student to succeed. Okay. Examples of that could be increased supervision. It could be sensory tools. It could be physical classroom arrangement, maybe simply going in and rearranging the classroom a little bit. That arrangement could be little Johnny's sitting right up next to you during independent work time, Barry, and just that proximity alone may be enough to provide some positive reinforcement to his behavior and prevent him from acting out. Or it could be implementing things such as visual aids. Okay, just anything that you are making an adaptation to the environment that can enable that student to succeed. Right below in this column, providing the information, we're also going to include information pertaining to are the interventions and strategies to implement before targeted. It's weird. My screen just went off. Y'all see that? Bear with me. I don't know if my connectivity's having problems tonight or what. That's weird.
Nah, it was Casper.
It's something. I've never had to do that before. That's not even letting me back in. Weird. I'm going to stop my screen and let me get over and sign in real quick. That's weird that it's not doing anything. Give me just a second. Never had it happen.
Well, and if you have a moment to think, when I went back to look, I don't see that assignment, the FBA assignment.
You know, unless it's switched over to where it's not visible. What section, Colette, are you in?
I always forget. Let me look.
Okay.
VE.
Okay. Let me get back in. That's really strange. I've never had it again. Here. Finally got me back in. Get week 7 pulled back. Okay, hold up. Let me share my screen. I apologize for that. Then I'm weird. Okay, everyone see my screen back to the original document I was on? Everybody good? So right before we got cut off, I was talking about here on the intervention strategies, the last area that is providing information for us to consider, include any preventative where there are signs that the student may escalate. So if there's any noticeable signs that you see, what are some preventive things that you would implement to maybe deter that behavior. Okay. Again, we've already listed some positive things, adaptations to the physical environment or any adaptations there. Now we're thinking about some preventive measures that we could implement, thinking ahead in the future that will deter that behavior from occurring again. So these could include checking all positive interventions and environmental supports that you currently have in place that you've put in. Also prompting any possible replacement behavior. Sometimes that replacement behavior, Danielle, may simply be you being in proximity, moving around the room. And as you see maybe Johnny start to kind of his demeanor change, you think, oh, we're getting ready to have it happen. And you simply just walk by, stand right by him, or even just touch him on the shoulder, just kind of refocus him. That may be enough to do it. So it could be something that simple. Or providing any type of positive reinforcement for possibly using or replacement behaviors or anything the staff should not do to further escalate the situation. Okay, so we're looking at anything we could implement to reinforce replacement behaviors, any positive reinforcement, and or also something that we could do that would prevent maybe another staff member from getting involved in triggering that student's behavior. Sometimes just another individual coming in may be perceived as maybe a threat that might escalate the potential of that student to act out. So maybe a deal where you have to communicate with the regular classroom teachers about, hey, if and when you see me having some challenges with Johnny, please don't come in and try to help intervene. That only escalates. So just communicating that to them and getting them not to do that. That may be a major factor right there in stopping it. Okay. So we have the start date. We're looking at interventions and strategies to support the results. So the results, here's where we're going to put the information in. After follow-up data is collected, determine the success of the strategy and document if it will be continued or discontinued. So just based on data you collected, knowing the successes, would you continue this or would you discontinue it? The result date, add the date, the results are determined. Okay, that could be in the future, something that would have to be determined, maybe not be determined now, but something you feel like you're going to implement these, you're going to come back and revisit and evaluate it. So here we are, December, 10th, 6th, 5th, maybe deal, we're going to come back, the results dates, we're going to come back and analyze that and review it at the end of the semester. So you still have between now and Christmas break, what, 10, 12 days? So maybe you're going to implement this, come back, look at the results date of December the 15th before everyone goes on break, or the December the 19th. Last few items is the operational definition of instruction to teach the replacement behavior. So out beside it talks about replacement behavior allows the student to meet the function of their behavior in an appropriate way. So the example here that they provided, and we have for you, be specific and describe what the behavior looks like and sounds like. This may include what the students will be taught to do as an alternative to the behavior of concern that serves as a similar function. For example, statement to meet that goal. Johnny will be taught to use 2 break cards each morning and afternoon by showing the teacher his card he needs a break. The break will be taken in the crazy corner within the classroom. So it can be something that simple. Okay. Next, we're going to drop down on this FBA and we're going to identify steps to follow when the target behavior occurs. What are some steps we want to follow when the targeted behavior occurs? So you might want to consider including steps to follow when the student is returning to the ready to learn. So when the student does, example, off task, that's an example. Shouting could be cussing, cursing, moving around the room, that can escalate to running from the classroom. So when the student does this, the staff response How's the staff going to respond? Allow silence, limit talking to student, provide a distraction. What would be something you can implement as a staff response on that? Okay. Right below this, the last thing we're going to look at on this FBA step 3 is copy and paste a data graph if you're not attaching it, if you choose to do that. Here also, you may want to summarize results of the intervention phase up to this point if you decide to do it. So an example could be something as simple as stating with the proximity of a teacher, a buddy system, and nonverbal prompts, Johnny has started to demonstrate the use of break cards independently. Johnny has also increased work completion from 20% of the time, excuse me, to 55% of the time. This kind of goes back to the example I gave last week on taking, some of the small baby steps. I think Colette brought it up and I said, hey, small victories for you. Those small victories might be 15 to 20 second intervals. Here, this particular student, that was a pretty significant jump by implementing some of those interventions to change that student's behavior. You went back and analyzed it and started kind of observing him and recording his progress. And to summarize it, you've noticed from before, Barry, when you implemented or you were observing, and before the implementation of the behavioral modification tools, Johnny was only completing work 20% of the time. After you changed it, modified his behavior, and implemented those practices listed above, it's now up to 55% of the time. So that's a pretty nice gain. That's a victory, right? Want to continue doing that, reinforcing, and you come back and reevaluate it over a period of time. That 55% may be up to 70, 75% time. So over multiple weeks or multiple months, you could go from 20% on this student. You keep employing these strategies, and it could be up in the 70s. Okay? Big difference versus not doing anything at all and doing the same thing over and over and making changes. So it'd be interesting once you guys get your information in here, some of the gains you could see out of it. Okay. This document is listed under week 7. So if you have to go back and use it as excuse me, as a reference, it's right there. It's a great tool to go back and use as a reference. If you and your group members run into a roadblock, excuse me, and you're not sure, you can go, oh yeah, we have that document. We can pop it up. This is exactly what Dr. Posey kind of went over step by step to kind of refresh your memory. You get stuck on any one of these steps. Again, remember, most of these, we're not looking for research paper length answers and responses, all that. Most of these are 1 to 2 sentences, are very direct and concise answers stating the goals and what you're looking for on your measurements to measure the behavior. Any question on this before I move to the next document? A lot of the things, again, that I mentioned, I'm gonna restate this. The first half of this step 3, the first half of this document, a lot of it is pulling the information that you've already collected and submitted to me, but you have the information from step 1 and step 2. Literally, we're going to start pulling that information down and putting it into step 3. And then the second half of step 3, you're taking that info and then you're putting in some specific goals or some specific statements as far as goals and adapting behaviors and putting modifications in based on some positive things that you noticed, not necessarily all negative, focusing on some positive and reinforcing that to see if you can continue that momentum in a positive way to decrease time off task in the classroom, which you got to see that statement at the very end when it was summarized, how much a student gained. So that's our goal, and that's what we're after on that. Any question on this before I stop the screen share and pop up the second document? Everyone good? Pretty self-explanatory on what we're looking for as far as what it's asking. Again, remember this whole FBA, as I explained all through this course, is a condensed version of maybe what you would do in the job setting based on the time frame of this class. It's an 8-week course, and we're trying to show you all the components and give you some experience on how to go through this process. So again, remember, this is very condensed, and we're kind of going through it quickly versus practical application out in the field when you're doing this. Anything before I
Other than
stop?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just going to stop sharing.
Other than not getting access to it, I don't have any questions.
Access. Oh, you on a personal note?
Well, it's not popping up on week 7.
Okay. So you're an EDE?
Yeah.
You tell me? Okay. I'm sure. I went double check those last week and I thought them up. So I'll definitely look at that, call that before. Okay. Then now the behavior intervention plan I'm going to drop down is in week 8 because it's the last week, like the final assignment. So I'm going to click on week 8. And before I share, I'm going to pop up the intervention plans. Give me just a second. I'll go back to screen share for you. Get the form pulled up. All right. I'm going to go back to my screen share. I've got my document up. Okay, so it should be visible for you now. It shows on my end that it is. Is everyone good? Thumbs up. Danielle, Barry, I'm picking on you guys because I can see you right there. There. Okay, all right. So again, to find this document, we're going to drop down. You click on week 8 of the course, just like where you have previously to find all the documents. So the behavior intervention plan form. Again, a lot of this is very straightforward, to the point. Again, remember when you're doing this, the VIP form, strongly encourage your groups to make sure you have access right there to step 1, 2, and 3, because we're pulling a lot of the information. A lot of this may be repetitive in certain areas. So again, at the top, we'll put in the student's name. School, you can put XYZ. The date, you can put Sunday's date. If you want to put the student's actual grade, that's good. You're just going to list his actual date of birth on the previous form. Okay. Behavior intervention plan basically is created in response to exhibited persistent severe behaviors. 1, that interferes with the student's learning or the learning of others. 2, the second reason is it warrants interventions to positively redirect that targeted behavior. Those are the 2 main reasons we do it. The plan, basically the goal of the plan is to define how the student will be taught, the skills needed for behavior modification, provisions for monitoring the progress, and also crisis management. So part 1, summary of findings. What's the problem behavior? We've already identified it, step 1, 2, and 3, right? So we're literally just going to list it. For some of your groups, it may be one problem behavior. For other groups, it could have been 2, couple different ones that you were seeing together that correlated with each other. So you're going to list them. Also out here, again, this is a Word document, so you can literally just pull it up, key in your information. The frequency. Okay. The frequency, you're going to list that. The intensity of it. How intense were those behaviors displayed consistently? The duration. Okay. Length of time. Frequency, how often? Intensity, how intense was that behavior that was displayed? and then the duration. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. Right down below, we're gonna go in and list an operational definition. So a clear description of the targeted behavior. So here we're asking you to basically just to write a clear operationalized description of the target behavior that would be addressed in this behavior intervention plan. Okay, again, you've already done some of this, step 1, step 2, and step 3. Basically, you're going to transfer it over. A clear operational definition to target the behavior. The next item we're going to do is drop down and we're going to identify functions. So we're going to write a description of the function that the target behavior is serving for the student. We're going to write a description of that function that the target behavior is serving for the student. Next thing, we're going to look at interventions. Okay. With a focus on setting event strategies, how can the environment, the setting, antecedents, how can the environmental triggers be anticipated or adjusted to minimize or avoid the targeted behavior? So basically here, you're going to do a statement where you're identifying the antecedents to the behavior triggers, and then list possible strategies to minimize or avoid that behavior. So we just did that in step 3 when we went down on step 3. That was some things, some strategies. What are some positive interventions that we could employ, Barry, to minimize that? It could even include eliminating certain staff members. They may be a trigger, okay? So we're literally going to take that information we just identified in step 3 on the previous form, and we're going to plug it in right there. Okay, remember I said some of this is going to be repetitive. Then we're going to look at instructional interventions. What changes to the curriculum or instruction will be helpful, and who will make that happen? Here, we're wanting to identify curricular or instructional evidence-based strategies or interventions to use that will minimize or avoid the targeted behavior. What are some changes in the curriculum based on your student and based on things you've identified in steps 1, 2, and 3? Okay, so here you're just basically going to provide a written, detailed statement providing that information. Okay, what changes to the curriculum or instruction would be helpful to make this happen?
Now, would that also include like a 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off of curriculum?
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Okay. The next thing, consequential interventions. What consequential or positive reinforcement interventions will be useful? Okay. Going back up to step 3, toward the end of that document, we just kind of more focused on some of the positive, okay, versus the negative, some of the consequences. Doesn't have to be all consequent, could be some positive things here. What could be some consequential or positive reinforcement interventions that are going to be useful? So you're going to identify strategies or interventions that can be used to reinforce and or redirect corrected behavior, and also minimize and or avoid the targeted behavior. I gave an example a while ago of simply just call it the zone of proximity, where you're up moving around and you see Johnny, maybe just his body language is sending red flags to you. Danielle's like, I can tell he's getting ready to tee off here. I can see it. And all you got to do is literally just walk over and stand right beside his desk. That right there may be an intervention that you can employ, and it will totally maybe ward off that negative
You must have been
behavior.
watching me today then.
And a lot of times, always when I was a building level principal, I used to tell my teachers, look, guys, being up in proximity is a huge preventive measure that you can take as a teacher. I always wanted to be up moving around because I could see how they were doing. I could do a lot of progress monitoring informally by just walking around and kind of looking to make sure if they're on task. Did they understand? I can see they're working their math. I know they're on task. But if Johnny, and I'm seeing his body language, all I gotta do is go stand by him and maybe even just put my hand on his shoulder or lean over and put my hand on his desk and kind of just stand there by him for a couple minutes, and that's all it takes. I never get to say a word to him. Okay. So I always just being in proximity, I always say was a huge deterrent of negative behavior. And you have an advantage because you can prevent it. You don't have to make a big scene about it. And you're also being able to monitor student progress. Did they fully understand the lesson? Or am I seeing enough? I need to stop everyone, go back, and reteach an objective really quick. I'm visually and formally seeing they're not getting it. Okay. You can do multiple things with that. The next thing, what is a replacement behavior? We need to identify replacement behavior. So what behavior or behaviors will be taught to replace the target behavior? How will it be taught, retaught, reinforced, and by whom? Okay. So just kind of give an explanation on how you would teach or identify that replacement behavior. Maybe explain how you would reteach something if you had to reteach or reinforce it, and who's going to do it. Barry, is it going to be you in the resource room because that's where it's happening? Is it going to be a collective effort between you as a resource teacher and Johnny's regular classroom teacher, something that they can do that's simple to reinforce what you're trying to accomplish? So here it may be multiple people. It may not be limited to just you in that resource room. It may be the entire team for when that student goes out for special classes, music, art, or going into for regular instruction. Okay. So it's important to communicate this with everyone involved, with students, so everybody's together and on the same page. 2 more parts, pretty short, to the point. Okay. Behavior intervention plan for this assignment sounds like a big, long, lengthy deal. Really, it's not. We've already done a lot of the legwork, steps 1, 2, and 3. We're pulling it in, fine tuning it here in this VIP. Step 3, areas of concern. We're going to focus on our areas of concern. Identify unexpected events or other possible behaviors that may emerge in the process of teaching a replacement behavior. On this, I always say, every day I tell teachers this, building principals, for every decision you make or you're getting ready to make, you need to have a plan B, C, D, and F. Forward think and think, okay, what if I do this and it goes the wrong way and this happens? What's going to be my backup plan? Okay, I employ that. What if that backup plan then goes expected? You always have something to fall back on, and you kind of pre-plan that, so you know. You have to think quick on your feet, but it's definitely good to know, hey, I got a backup plan times 5. Okay, that's what we're doing here. Areas of concern. What are some unexpected events or other possible events that may emerge in the process of doing this? Okay. So you have to think about your settings, things that are going on that you've identified, and anticipate. Basically, you're trying to anticipate something coming up. Okay. If it happens, I need to implement this intervention to keep Johnny from going off the rails on us here. Also, you want to consider how to minimize peers reinforcing a new detrimental behavior. Okay. Johnny's coming in, Barry. He's totally disrupting your class. Class is responding to that. It's reinforcing his negative behavior. So on this, we're trying to figure out what can we do as a resource teacher in that setting to prevent his peers from reinforcing his outburst to get him what he wants. Okay. So not only am I going to be focusing on Johnny when I'm thinking about this, also think about what can I do here, a strategy to employ that will prevent the other 3, 4, 5 kids from reacting to that and reinforcing his behavior. He's getting what he wants, and I want to try to ward that off. Okay, what can I do to prevent it? And that's what we're looking at on this. Identify possible difficult situations that may emerge that would derail your behavior intervention plan. So here you want to kind of forward think a little bit and think about what would be some detrimental, difficult situations that could totally derail or throw this plan off. Okay, it could be something major at home that has disrupted, major disruption at home, and it totally is going to throw your plan completely out of whack. I don't know how else to say that. Out of whack. We're just going, it's out the door. Everything you worked hard on, and because of a situation you can't control. So we need to think about, hey, what if that were to happen? What could be some things I could fall back on that maybe I could quickly try and turn this thing around and get them back on the right track? Okay. We all know they all have situations at home that could happen to any one of us at any given moment when we're planning and building these. So it's always kind of good to have a backup plan in your mind. The last thing that we're looking at here on this behavior intervention plan for your group, monitoring, the monitoring of behaviors. We're going to monitor and evaluate here. How will the behavior be assessed and evaluated? So basically here it's asking you to consider what data will be collected, how will it be collected, how often. So we've collected everything in step 1, 2, and 3. We have this formalized plan here. Now that we have this plan in place, Barry and Danielle and Colette, your group, and we get it employed and we have a meeting and we have this, everybody on the team knows what's going to be expected. What are the goals? What are the reinforcements? Moving forward to determine how this works, how effective is it? How are we going to assess this plan or evaluate it to see if it's working? What would be some things that your team would do to monitor, evaluate, and collect some data to see if this thing's going down a successful pathway? We need to know, right? We just don't want to assume that we're putting all this in a plan. We're going to lay it out here to the group because I took the time to put it in a plan. It's going to work. And we assume that, move on. Okay, like anything else, we want data to support it. We want to know whether we're going down the right pathway. We don't want to just assume these 4 steps where these worse. Okay? So as a group, we're going to talk about what are some ways that we could evaluate this and then reconvene in a month and just review it and say, hey, this has definitely got our student on the right pathway here. Or we're looking at the data and going, oh my gosh, I think he's taken 3 steps back. He's gotten worse. What do we do? So every so often you have to evaluate, monitor, adjust, and go at it again. Even if it's the results aren't what you want. You do everything else. We do it all. We have to evaluate the situation. We have to make our adjustments, adjust, monitor, reevaluate, and go at it again. Come back in another month, review, adjust, reevaluate, and try it again. Okay. So thinking about how we're going to evaluate it, see if we're successful or not. Okay. On a personal note, I've seen groups have to come back due to unfortunate circumstances, going back up to the previous the area of concern, where it was a total dumpster fire in that person's that student's house. It got turned upside down on them. We just implemented this plan. We monitored that student's behavior. We came back, we reevaluated, we looked at our data, we made our adjustments. And man, what was put in place didn't work, but there was an outside factor. The area of concern was things occurred outside and away from the school that totally changed the situation. And so we're having to make our adjustments here, okay, to make sure that student's successful. All right, and take a breath now. Any questions? I went over a lot and covered a lot in the last hour. Just I want to go through step by step to make sure everyone had a clear understanding of that. This particular document, like step 3, a lot of the things we're looking for, guys, the content that we're putting in on this plan, especially the BIP, the items we're looking for is not anything that's long and lengthy. We're not looking for 2-3 paragraph answers. A lot of these are going to be straightforward, direct, explanations that might be 1, 2, upward of 3 sentences. Okay. But the goal is anybody on the team should be able to request a copy of that plan and look at each one of these areas and see what was put down and walk away with it with a clear understanding of what the full intention is as far as what we're going to do to help this student, whether it's changing behaviors, whether it's providing academic services, whatever it is. We want to make sure that it's clear enough that any one of your team members that serves that kid can sit down and look at it on their own and bring it back to you and say, hey, Barry, I totally get it. I understand what it is. I got it. Okay. Easy to understand. That's what we want. Any questions on that I can answer for you?
So step 3 is due this Sunday, and then this BIP is due 1 week from Friday, correct?
That is correct. Step 3, which I went over that document, the first half of this class, that is due Sunday on or before midnight. That is correct. Then the second document, the behavior intervention plan, we're going to turn around and you're going to submit it. It's due on or before midnight, 11:59 on Friday, December the 15th.
Awesome.
This
Thank you.
assignment, yes, this assignment's the only one out of all of them you've done that is not due on a Sunday. Okay.
So is reflection 2 due this Sunday or next Friday?
Friday. The reflection 2 is due on Friday. Again, you guys did reflection 1. It's very similar to that. 1 to 1.5 pages, as long as you effectively answer those prompts. Okay, it doesn't have to be 3, 4, 5 pages long. Most of you guys, everything that was submitted was right at a page. Some submitted a page and a half. So, behavior intervention plan, reflection 2, due on or before midnight, 11:59 on Friday, December the 15th. FBA step 3, due this Sunday on or before midnight. This Sunday, December the 10th. Let me double check. Oh no, yes, December the 10th. Okay. I will be available. I know it's a short week next week. I will be here. I'll be available. Regular Zoom time. If you or your group want to get on there, some of you guys may have already submitted your final. That's fine. I will be available on Wednesday. If you or your group has a question you want to get on there and ask, I will be available on Zoom. Right? If needed, I know it'll be a short window because we meet on Wednesday. That final is due on Friday. But if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to pop this behavior intervention plan up on Wednesday when I'm available, answer any questions you have. Okay. If you submit your final before that Wednesday or before that Friday and you don't want to get on there because you got everything turned in, that's fine. You don't have to. Okay. But I will be available on there in case anybody has questions. If I'm on there and it's 6, I don't see anybody, I will keep my Zoom open. But if I don't see anybody pop on after 6:30, I'll go ahead and probably shut it off. But if people are on there and they're asking questions, I'll stay on there. Okay. If needed, if you guys need it. Any questions on that? So you have 3 things left to complete this course. Step 3, due this Sunday. Behavior intervention plan, reflection 2, due on Friday the 15th. Okay. Any questions? That been right at an hour. How about that? I got all that done, about 3 hours worth of stuff. Got you done in an hour. How about that?
Dr. Posey, I need to talk to you, like just you and I on something.
Okay, I'll stay on and I'll stop the recording and all that. So
Okay.
that way, yeah, no problem. I'll be on here. Anything before we go, guys? Remember, if you have questions between now And Wednesday, when I get back on Zoom, be available if needed. Email me. Even email me after Wednesday if as you get close to that final submission, you have questions. Okay. Still check my emails just like I did morning and evening. I'll answer that for you. Okay. Any questions before we go? Danielle, and I'll stay on for you and we'll chat. Everybody good?
Thanks, Dr. Posey.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Did
Thank
you
you,
want me
guys.
to,
Thank you.
did you want me to stay on about the